There are ghosts in the Colosseum. They say if you listen long enough, you can still hear the crowd. A thunder of voices, the roar of hunger dressed as entertainment. But what the Romans called games were never mere sport. They were rituals. Rituals of control, of power, of blood. Each game, each scream, each body, a message carved into the flesh of the empire. This is Rome, and Rome does not forgive weakness first. The game of the 12 crosses. It began as punishment for treason, but soon it became something darker, a spectacle. 12 prisoners were chosen, sometimes slaves, sometimes soldiers, sometimes anyone unlucky enough to be accused of betraying Rome. They were nailed to 12 crosses arranged in a perfect circle, each facing inward. In the center stood one condemned man, unchained, given a weapon, a dull blade, almost blunt. His only chance at life was to fight the 12 dying men as they hung on their crosses and end their suffering before the sun set. If he failed, if even one man still breathed by dusk, the Praetorians would flay his skin alive. The Romans watched. They placed bets. Would mercy win or madness? No one ever survived the game of the 12 crosses. Second, the Feast of Beasts. Emperor Commodus loved this one. He believed himself a god, Hercules reborn. He ordered a great banquet, tables laid inside the arena. Senators, nobles, courtesans, all invited to dine upon roasted meats and honeyed wine. And as they feasted, cages opened. From the shadows came lions, bears, tigers, beasts starved for days. Chained slaves were thrown among them, wearing the masks of mythic heroes. The crowd laughed, drunk on wine and cruelty, as Commodus stood from his throne and declared, "Let Rome dine upon fear." The music played louder to drown out the screams. Third, the fire race, Nero's favorite. When the city burned, he saw beauty in destruction, and he wanted to recreate it. So he commanded a race. Naked men were tied to wooden chariots, their backs smeared with oil and tar. The wheels were set aflame. They were told to run. Whoever reached the finish line before collapsing would be granted freedom. None ever did. The emperor laughed as the arena burned, calling it the dance of the living torches. Some historians say Nero wrote a poem about it. Others believe the poem was written by one of the burning men. Fourth, the game of lovers. Rome was cruel not only to bodies, but to hearts. This was a punishment for adultery, but also a warning. Love belonged to no one but the emperor. Two lovers were buried waist-deep in sand, facing each other. Between them stood a spear, the symbol of Mars, god of war. Then the gates opened. From one side came a bull, from the other, a lion. If the lovers reached for each other, they died faster. If they stayed apart, the beast circled longer. In the end, Rome always won, and the crowd called it poetic justice. Fifth, the hunt of the condemned. Every dawn in the Colosseum began with this, the venatio, the beast hunt. But the most infamous version happened under Emperor Domitian. He turned the arena floor into a false forest, trees, grass, even hills built of painted wood. Criminals were released into it, naked, starving, trembling. Then the gates opened again. Leopards, panthers, crocodiles, and even elephants poured in. The condemned were given sticks, sometimes knives, sometimes nothing. It was not a fight. It was theater, the theater of fear. By noon, the arena smelled of iron and rot, and Rome applauded. Sixth, the game of mirrors. Few records remain of this one, but whispers tell of it. A game devised by Caligula himself, meant not to kill but to break the mind. A single prisoner was placed in the arena surrounded by mirrored walls, polished bronze reflecting their image infinitely. In the center lay a covered pit. The audience was silent. When the cover was removed, the prisoner saw themselves, falling into an endless reflection of their own death. The mirrors hid trapdoors. The victim never knew which image was real and which was an illusion. They died chasing their own ghost. Caligula called it art. Seventh, the blood wedding. For the anniversary of his conquest in Gaul, Julius Caesar ordered a spectacle of unity, a wedding between Rome and the nations it had crushed. Pairs of slaves, one Roman, one foreign, were dressed as bride and groom. But when they reached the altar, The priest was replaced by an executioner. Each pair had to fight to the death. The survivor was crowned Rome's spouse. By the end of the day, hundreds lay dead, and Caesar raised his goblet and whispered, "Rome marries only the strong." Eighth, the Sea of Blood. Perhaps the grandest game Rome ever devised, the Colosseum was flooded with water, turned into a false sea. Ships were brought in, manned by slaves and prisoners dressed as ancient warriors. This was the naumachia, the mock naval battle. But it was no mockery. Over 10,000 men were forced to kill each other in the name of spectacle. The water turned crimson. Even the gulls refused to fly above it. And when the tide finally drained away, the arena floor cracked from the weight of the dead. Ninth, the Children's Hunt. This one was whispered even in Rome, the one game too vile to record in the official archives. Under Emperor Tiberius, when whispers of rebellion spread through the provinces, he ordered a demonstration of Roman mercy. Children of the rebels were brought into the arena. They were told to play hide and seek in a mock forest. The crowd was charmed until the gates opened again. Dogs, starved, trained for war, were released. The crowd's laughter died, but none dared to look away. When it ended, Tiberius stood and said, "Let the world know, even innocence must serve the empire." 10th, the silent game. No blood, no fire, no beasts, only silence. The condemned were made to stand in the center of the arena, surrounded by 50,000 Romans. If they could remain still for 1 full hour, no sound, no movement, they would be freed. But the silence was never pure. Children cried, coins rattled, whispers crawled. Those who flinched were shot with arrows. By the end of the hour, the only sound was breathing, and even that, Rome took away. 11th, the Emperor's Shadow. The final and most forbidden game, one that Rome tried to erase, it was played only once by Emperor Caracalla. He wanted to prove that even gods could die. A man was chosen, the Emperor's double, dressed, painted, crowned. He was paraded as Caesar, kissed by the crowds. Then, at sunset, the Emperor entered the arena himself, walked behind his own shadow and slit its throat. "Now let Rome know," he said, "that even divinity bleeds." The crowd was silent. No applause. Only the echo of something too close to truth. Epilogue: the arena never sleeps. When night fell, the slaves washed the sand. They carried bodies like offerings. The emperors slept, the people forgot, and Rome called itself civilized. But the ghosts remember. And if you ever stand in the Colosseum at midnight, listen closely. You might still hear the echo of those games, not as history, not as legend, but as warning. Because Rome may have fallen, but her appetite never did. The arenas are gone, the sand has turned to dust. But if you close your eyes, you can still hear it. The roar, the trembling heartbeat of thousands watching one man die. Rome has fallen, yes, but the darkness that built it never left. It merely changed shape. The hunger behind the games. They called it entertainment. But it was hunger. The deep ancient hunger that stirs when civilizations grow too powerful to fear anything but themselves. Rome fed its people bread and blood. Because blood is memory. Because watching another die makes you forget that you must. It wasn't cruelty. It was a mirror. And the Romans stared into it every day until they stopped recognizing the reflection. The psychology of the Colosseum. The Colosseum wasn't built for the gladiators. It was built for the citizens. They came not to see men die, but to see themselves reborn through death. When the sword fell, when blood sprayed across the sand, they felt the boundaries of mortality blur. For a heartbeat, they were gods. Empathy was burned out of them like weakness, and Rome called that purification. The religion of power. Power became Rome's true god, an invisible deity demanding endless sacrifices. The priests of this faith wore no robes, they wore armor. Their temples were arenas. Their hymns were the chants of thousands saying, "Kill him." And so they did, again and again. Because power once tasted demands renewal. It demands proof. It demands blood. The dream of immortality. Every man in that crowd believed he was part of something eternal. They saw the empire as a sun that would never set, but suns burn out, and empires too rot from the inside, not from enemies, but from the emptiness of victory. Rome's greatest fear wasn't defeat, it was boredom, so it turned suffering into spectacle, and called that purpose, the collapse of meaning. As centuries passed, the games grew more grotesque. The crowds grew dull, they demanded new thrills, more pain, more shock, but excess kills reverence. When everything bleeds, nothing feels sacred. In time, even the emperors began to sense it, that they were feeding a god who was already dead. A god named Rome, the feminine shadow, the forgotten women of the games, the gladiatrices, the sacrificed priestesses, the nameless lovers of emperors, were not merely victims. They were symbols of what Rome feared most: feeling, compassion, softness, the power that comes not from domination, but from surrender. So Rome silenced them, erased them, and by doing so, erased the part of itself that could still love. Empires die when they forget how to love. The whisper of the dead. The ghosts of the arenas never left. They linger in the architecture of every empire since, in stadiums, in spectacles, in the quiet thrill we feel when someone else is humiliated for our amusement. We call it entertainment. Rome called it ludi, but it is the same God, fed by the same offering, human dignity, the mirror of civilization. Look closely at the screen you hold, at the crowds that watch, at the violence you scroll past, the outrage you consume, the humiliation you cheer. Rome is not gone, it is reborn every time we turn cruelty into ritual. The Colosseum is no longer made of stone, it is digital, vast, and always hungry. The end of the games. When the empire fell, the arenas filled with silence. Grass grew where blood once pooled, the people forgot. But silence is deceptive. The spirit of the games, the need to see, to judge, to destroy, hid in our stories, our myths, our politics, it waits, always, because every civilization eventually faces the same temptation, to entertain itself with its own decay. And so the story of Rome ends where it began, in the heart of every spectator. The games were never truly about the gladiators, they were about us, our fascination with power, our worship of death, our need to look into darkness and pretend it isn't a mirror. The Romans believed the blood of others could make them immortal. We now believe that forgetting theirs will make us innocent. Both are lies, because the Colosseum still stands, not in stone but in memory, and the crowd never really left.